My name is Natasha Grimes, and I am going to be presenting today on the organizational culture of Google. Google is a very familiar household name. It's a powerhouse search engine. We all know Google Chrome and all of the great Google gadgets. But how much do we know about Google and its culture as a place of employment, as a workplace? How many of us know about the Googleplex that's located in Mountain View, California, that so many individuals try hard to become a part of? So what we're going to do is take a look at the organizational culture of Google and really look at what is it about this particular organization that makes their culture unique. Going to be looking at Google's organizational culture and looking at the idea that it fosters an environment that optimizes performance in the workplace. We all have our idea of what the optimal work environment would be, what the best work-life balance would be for a company if we had our dream organization. And Google has a very unique, not only culture as far as just their ideas and values, but even their physical culture for their corporate headquarters located in Mountain View. We're going to take a look at really just how they work to optimize the performance of their employees. Some of the key components for Google being able to optimize performance in the workplace, one is for us to look at the understanding of the importance of human capital. Just how important it is to really take care of the talent and to invest in the resources needed to attract and retain the best human capital. And we're also going to look at the Google life, which I think is going to be very eye-opening to really see just how their current organizational culture physically looks, and just what is it like to be what they call a Googler. We're going to look at a day in the life of a Googler and what it would be like to actually work on site at the Googleplex. We're going to also look at components for optimizing employee performance at Google. What are some strategies? What are some ways in which they go about optimizing employee performance? What are some key ideas that they utilize to make sure that their employees are optimal as far as their performance? We definitely see Google as one of the powerhouse tech companies. So just what is it that makes them different from, say, Apple or any of the other tech companies? And then we're going to finally take a look at Google's success. How is it that their culture has played a major role in the success of Google? Strategic human resource management is used to attract and retain the smartest, most diverse employees in competitive business environments. The tech industry is one of the most competitive industries that seeks to find the most intelligent and some of the smartest individuals because of a certain skill set and creativity and ingenuity that is needed in order to be one of the leading developers of technology. That human capital that we're referring to includes the knowledge, skills, and ideas and information experiences and all those things that can be brought to an organization. Wright and McMahon discusses this in their study, and they really emphasize bringing back the human back to strategic human resource and really focusing once again on the employee. Google does this by really vetting out those individuals that they don't deem as a true Googler. They have a certain mindset of individual that they're looking for that would be that human capital that's going to help them continue to advance technology needed to be in such a competitive market. And what we mean by human capital is really just people, putting an importance back on people. And organizations who do that, according to this study, really are making for a more business environment that's more competitive in nature. And with this, we're also looking at the idea that human capital is how individuals choose to receive training or gain knowledge or education, and what they do to enhance their skill sets. And so not only is the company or the organization recognizing the importance of human capital or people, but the individuals themselves. That's why there's such a demand for individuals in the tech field, because they have chosen to go into that field where really the knowledge base is that's a very unique and select individual has to be part of that organization in order for them to really seek out the best talent. They want to be very competitive in being able to get the best. What's interesting is that the idea that motivation being key to connecting the abilities of human capital to behaviors, because it's one thing for the individual to have a knowledge base, but are they motivated to utilize that knowledge to better the organization, or are they motivated to work? Strategic Human Resource Management institutes performance motivators to influence employee skills to transfer to desired behaviors and outcomes. And so strategically, organizations such as Google put things in place to motivate employees, whether it's benefits, whether it's compensation, whether it's recognition. All of those things are really driving forces for them to motivate that individual to perform. It's recognized that individuals make up the human capital at the organizational level, so it's important also in how they interact with one another. Are they able to collaborate? Are they able to talk and discuss different ideas? And that is something that is very prevalent at Google. We'll take a look at actually even the way that Google is set up. It's a very open environment, really to encourage the idea of collaboration and that social interaction, because it is so vital in how that individual then uses that information to share it with one another, and they come up with these creative ideas at the organizational level to make the company even more competitive. One thing about Google is that they focus on hiring the right people with curious, inquisitive minds, people who are not afraid to ask the why, that fit the Google culture. I did an interview with what would be considered a Googler. It's a coworker of mine who actually works at the Googleplex. Google is a client of ours, and she works on site, and she gets to see firsthand and even experience the benefits of Google. And one thing that she emphasized and said is that when a Googler asks a question of her regarding some of our services, it is okay for them to question. They are taught to question everything. They're taught to not take anything as face value, to always dive deeper. So they're focusing on hiring those individuals who are inquisitive, curious, who will dig deeper, to really have that individual that will exhibit leadership qualities, who will not only work at the level that they're at now, but also how can they bring along other individuals to also think as a Googler. So Google's focus is not necessarily on where that individual went to school, what grades they earned, because Google believes that smart individuals, they're not necessarily measured by their grades, but really just how inquisitive they are, how motivated they are to be an avid learner, which will require less training on the part of the company. So they're not necessarily looking for someone who was a straight A student, but they're defining smart as someone who is a thinker, who thinks outside of the box, who can create, who has ideas, not necessarily what was their GPA. And Google compensates according to the productivity of their best employees, not necessarily according to the job title. So it's not about titles. We'll look at in just a few moments. The structure of Google is not a hierarchical structure, but one that individuals are recognized and praised for productivity, but not necessarily according to their title, because even the subordinates who are considered the subordinate to a manager are also encouraged to ask questions, to come up with new and creative ideas. So let's take a look here again at really the life as a Googler. I think that really speaks volumes to the culture of Google. It's really intentional that their offices are open and airy and designed to encourage employees to interact with one another and to ignite conversations while having an opportunity to literally play, as we see there in the picture with the employee coming down the slide. But strategically that's done because workplaces are incorporating more and more opportunities for games and play, but to link those activities to work, because how many of us, whether it's a formal or informal opportunity to have fun, to relax, even to rest, have rest breaks, to be able to not have to worry about packing lunch, all of those things are strategic initiatives by Google to really make the life as a Googler something unique, but at the same time, it will cause that employee potentially to really be dedicated and motivated to the company while optimizing really all of the strategic skill sets and things that employee has. When you look at Google, these work environments are coined as constructive recreation and helps to alleviate workplace stress. All of those are truly key components of a company who has their employees in mind. But we have to wonder, is there really an ulterior motive? What else is there? Is it really just about the employee, or is it really something more? Well, let's keep going and we'll see. These perks, and we've seen previously, even in the video, things such as offering a yoga studio, a Google Nap Pod, and those communal eating stations and free on-site medical. These are all available for employees as part of their perks. But again, is there a catch? Is this really too good to be true? Google has invested millions into the Googleplex for their employees, which really can be considered a playground for its employees, which we could consider the cultural metaphor here. Life as a Googler includes physical activity and play while at work, and we wonder, well, why would they do that? I'm pretty sure that Google had research and looked at, well, what would be the benefits of offering these opportunities for physical activity and these options. And in a study that I looked at for this project provided by BMC Public Health suggests that physical inactivity is actually a global health issue, and they advocate for physical activity to decrease the risk of many chronic diseases. So the culture at Google is really one that individuals are encouraged to move, to have physical activity. We saw the pools, the bicycles, we see the play areas. Oftentimes corporate settings lead to sedentary lifestyles, according to this study here by Petasic and Benny. And this study concludes that workers who take periodic walk breaks or walk to their coworkers rather than emailing or doing other things rather than just sitting could actually reduce some musculoskeletal disorders. And with that being said, the work environment at Google really gives an opportunity for their employees to be more physically fit, which in turn would optimize their work performance. Employees are less likely to take off days from work. They're less likely to be sick if they have the opportunity to eat healthy foods, such as provided by Google. They're less likely to have some of these chronic diseases because of the physical activity that's offered to them, if the employee decides to take advantage of those opportunities. When we're thinking about Google's organizational culture, we're not just talking about the physical workplace, the artifacts. We're also talking about the values and beliefs of that organization. Google has an informal corporate motto that states, "Don't be evil." And what that really is referring to is not to lose the sense of their core sense of corporate responsibility. Because let's face it, Google has access to tons of information, data, and there is the ability and the availability for them, if they chose to be a bad Google, that they could do harm or evil to really hurt individuals and even hurt their competitors. Therefore, that is a very strong belief system and value system of the organization, is to not be evil. Another key component of their organizational culture is, again, their idea of being collaborators, and being encouraged to ask questions. They offer something called an all-hands meeting every week, during which time they are given the opportunity to ask questions of their CEO. Once again, that safe environment that's fostering the transparency and the sharing of ideas, and the idea that it's okay to take risks. Another thing that Google's culture really emphasizes is leadership and communication, and having leaders who help their employees align their individual goals with that of the organization will ultimately aid in optimizing the employees' performance. And so, just by the example of the CEO having an all-hands meeting once a week with the employees really speaks volumes of the importance that the organization places on the ideas of the employees. Clear communication regarding expectations and the direction the company is going will allow the employee to understand and agree and have share common goals. So it's definitely important and key for an organization to have open communication, which gives an opportunity for shared ideas. One other aspect of Google is that they really pride themselves on having a diversified pool of individuals who speak different languages from different backgrounds. Again, not necessarily being the individual with the highest GPA. And according to this study, it's important for companies to allow employees to have that degree of open communication and to be able to share ideas, and in order for them to really get feedback from employees, because they understand that it's encouraged. And that's something that Google strongly also does, is encourage feedback and input from the employee. The study with Gupta and Shaw says that attitudes and employee behavior is directly impacted by how valued an employee is and their compensation. One thing with regards to Google is that they really do attempt to show their employees that they value them just simply by the perks and the benefit package that they offer, the compensation that they offer. Again, it's a very competitive field, a very competitive place to be a part of. But as we can see in even the physical layout, the physical artifacts that are a part of the company, just the reputation of Google, it's something that the employer is directly impacting the employee by attempting to show that they value their human capital, that they value their employees. Google's success as a result of workplace freedom could really be seen as giving their employees an opportunity to have the freedom to be creative, to think outside of the box, but also their integration of work and play considers them as really one of the reasons why they're ranked as one of the best places to work by Fortune magazine consistently. They also have what they consider a 20% time, which is also known as the Google way, which means that they're allowing their engineers to spend 20% of their time working on personal projects that they choose. So it is giving them the freedom, the flexibility to be creative, to not just work on the day-to-day tasks, but having their own 20% time or a designated time where they can work on personal projects. Now, those personal projects ultimately will benefit Google. So really, it's when you think of it in the sense, it's not truly free time or freedom, because ultimately it's something that's going to benefit the employee, but at the same time it gives kind of a balance to doing what we say do versus doing what you want to do. Ultimately, it benefits the company, and Google is successful as a result. A study by Walker talks about exercising normative compliance, which promotes a sense of belonging at each level of the organization, which is based upon a shared organizational culture. And we see this really take place at Google, that you definitely see a sense of belonging at each level. The idea that your ideas are important, take time for creativity. We want to hear from you during our all hands meetings. So there is a shared sense of a culture there, and it even has its own term as the Google way. Other companies try to model their workplace like Google. The company that I worked for, when we went into a new building, one of the things that our CEO did was really study Google and their workplace environment. And although our budget would not allow for our building to be as advanced as Google, there are definitely some key components as far as the way that the structure of the building is laid out, which promotes interaction, collaboration, and openness, just as Google does. So that has not just impacted Google's success, but potentially the success of other companies that glean from what they've done. Most of the studies that I read and used for this project related to Google with regards to their technology. It was really difficult to find specific studies that related to Google that evaluated the organizational culture. There were some that, of course, that I found that talked about Google and the Googleplex, but primarily it was the use of Google as the search engine. The Google organization as a company and what they do in the technology field, but not so much the culture of it. However, with it being a tech company, it's pretty common for some of the values and beliefs because they pretty much go across the board. But if I were to state one of the major limitations, it would definitely be the limitations of the studies. The qualitative measure of the organizational culture, it was difficult to find anything that measured numerically the direct impact of all of the perks and all of the opportunities that Google has for their employees as far as compensation and benefits and the on-site perks, but how does that truly impact the performance? I think the best way that I could look at that is really to look at the revenue of Google and where they stand with their finances, but not directly related to the performance. The studies did not include internal perspectives of the organizational culture. Visual aids were not included in the study, and I believe that it was very important to give the physical aspect of Google's culture because that truly plays a role in the employee and the perks that they experience and potentially how that positively impacts the performance of the employee. And lastly, I wanted to just give some of my reflections. This was a very intriguing project. I know that we live in a fast-paced society that oftentimes it's hard for us to have a complete thought or creative ideas. I think organizations that encourage risk-taking will actually be better positioned to have better performance. I think that is partly probably one of the biggest reasons that Google has had so much success because they allow their employees to have out-of-the-box thinking, that they, as a culture for that organization, recognize the value of investing in a work environment that's conducive. When you think about the opportunities that individuals really have to even relax while working, they don't have to sit at a desk. They don't have to be constrained to the traditional corporate setting that makes for, I think, a better work experience. Organizational cultures that invest in its employees' well-being, provide perks and incentives, I think will gain more loyalty. I think because Google provided an opportunity for, or provides an opportunity for their employees to get health care on site if they need medical attention, healthy food options. Any organization that provides a home away from home atmosphere that's too extreme, I think anything that's in extreme or in excess could potentially be bad. So then it could be less work-life balance because work would then become their home. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned a little bit more about Google, the company that we all have come to know as a household name, as a search engine, as something that we all do. We Google. But this was truly an opportunity to see what goes on behind the scenes with Googlers.